afternoon. It is 12:01. My name is Caroline Sanders. I am the County Commissioner for District 4, which includes all of Pittsfield Township, a smidgen of Ypsilanti Township, and a smaller smidgen of the city of Saline. I am coming to you today in hopes that we will continue to do this on a monthly basis as a way for me to be able to be in contact with you as my constituents, to share information with you that, is sort of outside of our typical Board of Commissioner meetings and the Pittsfield Township trustee meetings that I do try and attend, as much as possible. And we will have a guest each time we do these community conversations on Friday with you. But before we get into that, I just wanted to share just a brief update related to the primary election. We had, Washtenaw County had 3 proposals that were listed. All 3 of them passed. Proposal A, which was a renewal for the Roads Commission. Proposal B, which is a renewal of the Conservation District's funding. And Proposal C, which is for parks and recreation. And so thank you to the Washtenaw County residents who voted and approved the renewal of all 3 of those proposals. And then just briefly, upcoming on the November ballot, we've got some additional proposals, and they are the renewal and restoration of enhanced emergency communication systems millage, the renewal and restoration of the Veterans Relief Millage, and we have a new one on that is asking the voters to consider establishing an older person's seniors services millage. So a millage that will service the mature residents, of which I think I'm counting myself in at this point. Mature residents support. And then lastly, a renewal and restoration of the Washtenaw County Community Mental Health and Public Safety Preservation Millage. So those are upcoming on the November ballot, and we would like for you to consider and of course take advantage of early voting, absentee voting, and in-person voting. So having said all of that, I'm gonna stop rumbling, and I am going to introduce you to Evan Pratt. He is our Water Resources Commissioner. I have had the opportunity to work with him, since 2021. And I've learned, I think, more than I care to about drainage and water issues here in our township and what we can and cannot do in terms of being able to support and provide services. So I am going to turn this over to Evan. Evan is going to be moving on to his next, I'm not calling it retirement. Evan is moving on to his next adventure at the end of this year. And I am wishing him well. I know that I will see him around. And I still have his cell phone number, so he can't get rid of me there.
That's right.
But I'm going to turn this over to Evan and let him share some information out with our constituents here in District 4. Evan, thank you so much for being my first guest on these Friday conversations. I appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, so for today, I know not everybody in the district is going to be able to join in. So with the idea that we're recording this, I'm going to go over a general summary of services that our offices provides. It's broad in some ways, but in other ways, because our office is technically a little separate from the county proper, what that means is our office does not actually receive any of the general taxes that go to the county. Most everything we do is either funded from an outside source, or most of the things we do are funded by what's called special assessments, which means communities and property owners fund just about anything that our office does that's substantive. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into the whole share screen mode. People can certainly put questions in the chat either now or as we get towards the end. And I'm not going to be able to see the chat as I'm presenting, but ask you to flag me if there's anything that makes sense to sort of stop in the middle of. But otherwise, let me just get to. All right. And I'm going to start my slideshow from the beginning. Folks can see this, I assume. So this is our
Yes, I
overview.
can see it.
Super, thanks. So first off, just kind of why am I giving this presentation? The commissioner has a variety of roles. We deal with construction type of project, heavy infrastructure, pretty much just for stormwater, so dealing with rain. We do have environmental services, so not just water quantity, but also water quality there with the pollutant tracking. So the green you see isn't actually pollution. That's actually dye testing upstream. We put dye in a particular location, and we want to make sure we understand where a particular receiving structure, like you see in the upper right of your screen, we call that a catch basin in somebody's backyard. We might put dye in there and look to confirm that it comes out the place where we think it's supposed to, as you see in that top middle. Also in the bottom left, since the 1970s, most subdivisions have been built with a storage pond to help reduce flooding. That's not true of subdivisions prior to the 1970s, or in some communities did not adopt modern stormwater management until the 80s or 90s. And then in the bottom right, we work with the Huron River Watershed Council, for example. And that's just on the stormwater side of what the Water Resource Commissioner does, but that's the core role of this office. We do have a bunch of other roles, though. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. There's 5 countywide elected officials in Michigan: the sheriff, clerk, prosecutor, treasurer, and water resource commissioner. I think those first 4, a lot of people have a pretty basic understanding of what those roles are. But I wanted to dive in because water resource commissioner or drain commissioner in some counties is unique to Michigan. So we've kind of got 4 main areas. We've got public works, where we deal with 3 kind of broad areas: utility financing, like water and sewer financing, as well as technical support. If a community wants to borrow money to do water or sewer improvements, we support them, but we don't own and operate any drinking water or sewer facilities. So the city of Ann Arbor or Ypsilanti Community Utilities Authority, or like Pittsfield Township through YCUA, provides those services. We also do what's called lake management, dealing with invasives on lakes for folks who petition us. Again, that's typically a special assessment district, and there's no lakes in District 4 that we manage. So I just mentioned that. Most of what we work with is in the northwest, southwest, or northern part of the county. Then we have a solid waste division. We've rebranded that as materials management because we do support a lot of recycling. The bottom line is the solid waste division handles waste diversion for things that definitely don't belong in your recycle bin, but also probably shouldn't be in a landfill. So these are things like automotive fluids. We take those throughout the week and the weekends. Automotive fluids, batteries, paints, household cleaning products, all kinds of stuff like that probably shouldn't even be dumped down the drain. We don't want that getting in our rivers, lakes, and streams. And I will put in a plug right now. We have 4 or 5 pop-up Saturday events throughout the summer. We work our way around the county. And on August 24th, from 9 to 1 o'clock at Reinerson Stadium, that's usually our biggest, what we call cleanup day. And people can sign up right now for a slot in that. We started a sign-up program for those cleanup days, and it's really cut the wait time. So August 24th will be our last event of the year. But what we found is in the early events, by having people sign up in advance and kind of picking the 15-minute slot, sort of like at Disneyland with the fast passes when they were doing those, your line's much shorter. And instead of people waiting anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, wait times are typically 10 to 15 minutes to get in and get your car unloaded. That pop-up day at Reinerson, we'll take electronics, sofas, what we call bulky waste, sofas, old bookshelves, electronics, big TVs, old computer terminals, all kinds of stuff. So these pop-up days, we take a lot more than our weekday or other regular Saturday events. But feel free to take a look at our website at Water Resources. If you just go to the county website and Google cleanup days, you'll get a variety of ways that you can either bring materials to our office or bring them to our pop-up days.
And that's on Eastern's campus, correct?
That's on Eastern's campus, right across
Okay.
the parking lot across from the football stadium is where we do that. So it's really the athletic campus there, a little ways from campus, but lots of room and space. And the Eastern's been a great partner for that year over year. And I think this year we've managed to avoid having a Rosie the Riveter event or a football game scheduled on top of our event there. We've had problems in the past, but got that sorted out. Then we do have a variety of environmental services. Those are about the only thing that we get a little bit of help from the county general fund with. One is from a regulatory standpoint, we deal with soil erosion control permitting in a lot of communities, not so much in Pittsfield because they have a building department. It's a bigger community that has their own building department and manages soil erosion during development. We do review development plans, though, for compliance with county regulations and making sure that they have good flooding prevention and stormwater management systems as new substantial developments are getting built, subdivisions and whatnot. But that, again, was not the case until in some communities until the 90s, including Pittsfield Township. So previously, we did not review development plans. We have a rain garden program that has over 1,200 rain gardens that have been built throughout Washtenaw County. I don't have a dot map for it, but a lot in Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, Pittsfield Township area, and then a few out county. We're also responsible for compliance with a wide variety of regulations that relate to primarily rivers, lakes, and streams. So we own a lot of water infrastructure. As you see, item 3 there talks about 770 miles of county drains, plus dams and ponds. We have to demonstrate every year to the state Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy that we are doing everything we can to look for pollution issues and address any that we find. Then there's a variety of miscellaneous issues we get involved with that often relate to contaminations or just sharing information with people in areas that we're not able to work on. But like I said, the core role is primarily the stormwater side of things. That's what set up the office, and all these other services that we provide are important to us because they do affect water quality if they're not done properly. Take a little tangent. I mentioned before that Michigan is the only state that has an elected water commissioner with the duties and responsibilities that we have. Basically, after the War of 1812, the Northwest Territories were, a large area of expansion. A lot of the Midwest, upper Midwest, basically from Louisiana all the way to Minnesota and over to Ohio and everything west of the Appalachians in the Midwest. So there was a guy, Edward Tiffin, who was the Surveyor General of the U.S., and he was responsible for surveying Michigan because some veterans from the War of 1812 had marched on Washington because they hadn't gotten paid yet. Washington didn't have printing presses at the time, and the country was not, there was no income tax back in those days. Income tax didn't start until the early 1900s. So there wasn't money to pay the veterans. So they had this great idea. Let's make Michigan the first Homestead Act state, and we'll give away land to these veterans. And people thought that was a pretty neat idea. But unfortunately, you can't give somebody a piece of land unless you can provide them with a deed that has describes this is your land and this is where it is and this is your legal title to the property. You can't do that without doing surveying prior to that. And Michigan had not been surveyed yet. So this fellow, General Edward Tiffin, was the Surveyor General of the United States. He'd done a number of other things in the Northwest Territories in Michigan. Tiffin, Ohio is named after him. He wrote a letter to James Madison, the president at the time, that said, "I shall no longer survey Michigan. It is uninhabitable." Basically, it was too swampy and wet. to be able to even survey the southeast part of Michigan to be able to give away land. So they kind of put that on hold, and veterans were homesteaded more in Indiana and Illinois at that time. But fast forward to 1834, Michigan became a state. And by 1836, I've seen historical documents that say it's maybe because of cholera outbreaks near Lansing. And cholera typically is associated with getting outhouse water into the water that you're using for your drinking supply. And the first drain law to assist property owners with better moving water around and connecting wetland to wetland and giving water a path to flow was established. Started out as a township function, but ultimately they started electing drain commissioners or water resource commissioners in about 1895 is the record of the first elected official in Michigan. There were a variety of laws and statutes about how things should be done, but at the end of the day, the Drain Code of 1956, it's Public Act 40 of 1956, is the governing statute for my office. And the important thing to point out is, I mentioned back at the beginning, everything my office does is based on special assessments. And to have a special assessment, we have to have had a group of people who've asked us to spend extra money on their behalf. They'd like to spend money over and above their normal taxes for some type of stormwater, issue or problem. So a special assessment district is really the focus of the Drain Code. It's a process law that describes how you can create a special assessment district, or if you've already got one, how you can either expand the district or expand the services being provided in an existing district. The Drain Code, though, doesn't tell anyone how to engineer systems or how to solve problems or anything like that. It's simply a process law that identifies a way to have property owners have the right to submit a petition to request additional services. And once we receive a petition, then our office can move along and identify alternatives to provide those services. So
Evan, I'm going to ask you to just park for 1 second there.
Yep.
I won't name the subdivision that you and I have worked on regarding this, but I do want you to try and just give, if you can, a brief example of what that really means. So if I live in an area and I am seeking relief for an issue that is not covered budget-wise and requires this special assessment, please help us better understand what that means.
Right.
You've got to get signatures, and it can affect people that don't necessarily live in your immediate area.
Yeah, that's right. So the way things work is we have a number of areas where there are established drain districts. So it's an established special assessment district. We've got a little over 500 of those across the county. So over the past 150 years, 2 or 3 times a year, some folks raise their hand and say, hey, we've got a problem bad enough. We're willing to pay a little extra money. And it's not terribly expensive, but we can't provide any service unless there's a legally established county drain. And once a drain is established, and again, as I mentioned before, that has to start with a petition process. We're very limited on how much of the property owner's money we can spend without a petition to make a major improvement, if you will. The amount of money we can spend without extra permission in the form of a petition from residents of an existing drainage district is 97 cents per foot of county drain. That works out to $5,000 per mile. So there's a pretty strong check and balance in the drain code that says unless people are really asking us to make substantial improvements or address a specific problem that would cost more than $5,000 per mile of this or that county drain, we can't do anything substantive. So most of the time, it's just maintenance activities that we can do without additional permission or an additional written request from a group of property owners to expand things. And the petitions are not that high of a bar. Typically, it's 10 property owners need to sign a petition that just says, hey, we'd like you to look into our problem. We're experiencing a problem in this location, and we'd like you to investigate addressing this problem in so many words. There's some legal language in these petitions, but petitions are up to either property owners or local units of government until we're authorized to proceed by an independent board that would host a public hearing after a petition is provided to our office. Until we're authorized to proceed, we're not for or against any additional payments. Again, that's a check and balance. We shouldn't get involved in whether people do or don't want to sign a petition, but we do provide petition packages to people. So a specific example would be, we certainly have multiple places around the county where people are having problems and there's no county drain district whatsoever. And we really can't even go out and, offer a lot of recommendation. I certainly will work with individual property owners myself to give some general feedback of, well, if I lived here, I could do this at my house, or maybe I would want to see if I could work something out with my neighbors, or you could petition our office, but in some cases it might be pretty expensive for us to solve a smallish problem. But we've got a number of areas too where there's a drain district for part of a subdivision, but not for everything upstream of it. And we can work on the areas where we've got established county drains, where we've either got a pipe or a ditch that's been, legally described as, hey, it's 1.5 miles long here, or 1.75 miles long. It starts here and it ends here. And the statute limits us to only performing work on what's been legally described in the past. So like a typical subdivision, that's going to be the pipes in the street and the drainage structures that feed the water from the street to the pipe. But it wouldn't include people's front yard or backyard. The pipe is there, and the property owner has the ability to connect into it to regrade their land so that it flows to the pipe that's provided in the public right of way. Sometimes we might have an easement through rear yards in some neighborhoods, and likewise, we can perform work on that pipe or ditch that's in the rear yards that we have an easement over and that's been described as, hey, it's the county's ditch starts from here to here. But we can only work on what's actually there. And again, if it's in rear yards, it's the same thing. It's the property owner's responsibility to grade their land appropriate to get their water to the county drain, or to put in a pipe. Like a lot of farmers will have field tile, and that's really the origination of county drain offices. Initially, before we were urbanized, pre-1900, almost all county drains were in rural areas. And the main reason was to provide a way for the farmer to have his field tile discharge into a ditch that's, lower than his field. They couldn't get a lot of land, goes up, down, and rolls, and you can't necessarily grade your land to get to a ditch or pipe. So you have to put in collect a little water in the low spot on your 40 acres or 20 acres or 10 acres and run a pipe underground to the drain. So we see that happening in existing areas where people would like us to extend the drain or provide additional services, and we can do that. But again, back to the private property piece, the way I've been trying to describe it lately is everybody knows that the road commission is responsible for roads in townships, and they do pavement, they do gravel. And if you're having a problem, you call them and grade the roads. They're also responsible for most of the drainage ditches along the side of roads. But the bottom line is, even though the road commission does paving and, puts gravel on the roadway, if I've got a pothole up by my garage, that's pavement or gravel, but that's private property. That's not the responsibility of the road commission. So likewise, if we've got a pipe in the roadway, if someone's got a problem, in front of their house, behind their house, that's still not something that we're legally authorized to fix, because there could be hundreds of people who have a little bit of a grading property problem on their property. And the whole point of the special assessment district is people are collectively paying for something that benefits at least a group of people or a subsection of district, and isn't really just a benefit to their own sole benefit to their private property. if fixing something would only benefit one property owner, that's really not the role of a public agency. Again, just like I said with the road commission and if you've got a pothole in your driveway. So I think I went a little long on that answer. Caroline, were you thinking of any other
No,
specific
no,
spots?
it was helpful. I just
Okay.
wanted a better understanding for those
Yeah.
that are going to be
Yeah.
viewing this at a later date,
Yeah.
what that really means. And a
Yeah.
special assessment could be that, maybe you've got 10 people that you needed to get it approved, but maybe it
Yep.
affects 15 and the other 15 are not happy that they now have this extra amount of money that's being
Yep.
added to their property taxes.
Yep. Yeah, we do run into that, but at the end of the day, we look at the problem and the issue, and if it goes through the process described in the drain code, some people call that a minority law, so a smaller group of people can initiate something. But I'll give one specific example. So the Stonebridge subdivision was built in a pretty historically wet area. There are some county drains that drain half of it, but there's a lot of private drainage systems throughout the Stonebridge area. And over the years, with maybe a little bit of back and forth, we have worked with the association there or representatives of their homeowners association. And I think we've all come to an understanding that there's things that we can do on the public infrastructure. And Stonebridge has chosen to make their own investments from their HOA on the private infrastructure. And that allows them to do what they think makes the most sense. Of course, they've got an HOA, so they can charge fees to their own residents. But if we're going to get involved, we really have to think about everybody in a special assessment district. And that's something that I think we help the folks at Stonebridge understand, because they're focused on the issues just in Stonebridge. We've got to be focused on, well, all the folks upstream here don't really benefit by doing, some particular fix that affects 10 of the walkouts in a section of Stonebridge with private infrastructure. So we've sorted that out, and they've made investments of, like $350,000 in the last couple of years. So either way, right, to improve something, it's going to cost money. Okay, so I'll get back to kind of overall what we do. I mentioned the Division of Public Works. So here's kind of a summary of the 5 things they do. Like I said, not a lot of impact specifically in District 4, other than Pittsfield Township has been working with us on waste diversion issues and starting to go down the road of joint contracting for recycling, so that if 5 communities band together, they'll probably get a better rate per household for taking that recycle bin away. It's just more efficient for one of the companies to not have to turn around at the dividing line between Pittsfield and Ypsi Township or what have you. And this is kind of a summary just through 2019 of the amount of pounds of material that we receive every year of this household waste. We're actually now up, we bump around 1 million pounds of material each year. Sometimes it's 800,000 now, sometimes it's 1.2 million pounds. Usually in each of those years, about half of that volume weight is paint. People bring us oil paint is great. We can reuse it. We work with a company that recycles that paint. They blend it and it gets placed in for sale at well below market places. At like Habitat for Humanity's got a store, and a place called We Care has a store. But there's a lot of electronics and what we call bulky waste. Again, the sofas and bookshelves and stuff in there that we take material back. And of course, like I said, the automotive fluids. So we don't own or operate anything. We did work to help set up a recycling authority in Western Washtenaw in the 1990s, and we still partner with them. But basically, there's 5 communities in Western Washtenaw that are independent of the county. We financed their recycling facility. I think there's 2 more years before it's paid off. And they have their own board, though, and they manage their operations. There's a special assessment fee for that, too. People are banding together for, low-cost recycling because they're doing it in bulk between 5 communities. So I'm going to just now stick with the core role. Like I say, moving water and properly purifying water is what our statute says. So bullet one there, number one is really water quantity. Bullet labeled two is really water quality. So we deal with both of those. And of course, there's a public health role in all that. The reason we're called the Water Resource Commissioner, but many counties call it the Drain Commissioner, is there's a section of the statute highlighted in red that basically says if you're responsible for a bunch of other water-related facilities, you can choose to call it water resources. And my predecessor made the choice back in the 1990s to change the name to Water Resources Commissioner, as have a half a dozen other commissioners out of the 60 or so around Michigan. And this thing's not moving along right now. Let's see what I can do here. Oh, it decided to freeze up on me.
Quick question for you, Evan. Are they advancing on your end?
No.
No. Okay, why don't you stop sharing and reshare?
Yeah, I was just about to go to that. All I got is unplug the thing and then plug it back in as far as my technical
That is the
skills.
extent of my IT knowledge, exactly.
Yeah.
But it usually works. So
Yeah, I like to be able to answer yes when the IT support person says, "Well, did you try a reboot?"
oh,
That's
it's my
usually the
first
thing they
step.
try. Usually the first thing. Let's try again. I'm going to stop sharing again. I'm going to close and reopen the presentation on my side of things. So apologize. If you want to see if there's any questions now, we can receive questions and I'll
Sure. I
see if
think
we
we
want to
only
take a pause.
we have one guest with us. The rest of us are staff. So I don't know if Ms. Weatherspoon has any questions for you.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you both for hosting this. This is very informative. I think I've shared with you both about an issue that I've had in Pittsfield Township, specifically in the neighborhood that I live in the Carpenter Division, right down the street from Carpenter Elementary School. Pretty much, we have an issue with the stormwater drainage, and we found some resolution to it, but we need your guys' assistance to kind of get started on it. And we don't want to, I mean, we're willing to put in for it, and we have some neighbors who agreed to also put in on some of the costs, obviously. Um, Pretty much all the storm water gets, to the back of our backyards, and some people mount up in other areas to prevent it from going, into other people's yards. So it's kind of just an overall issue in the neighborhood and has been for some years. But specifically, we just wanted to come up with a solution that we could both put in on pretty much a drench that we could trench out to the back. It's a drain that sits about 2 houses down to the right. And Commissioner Evan has, we've gone through the maps and stuff like that. And so pretty much we would just need some piping, boom, goes to that drain from our backyard. And it wouldn't be a whole lot of cost, and we would be willing to put in as neighbors on this sort of, task. It's a select amount of neighbors. You can give me your input, but we don't want to do it for the whole neighborhood. I mean, if they want to open it up to the whole neighborhood, we're just talking about our issue as surrounding neighbors. So you give me your feedback.
Can I ask Ms. Weatherspoon, does it affect more than the couple of neighbors that you've?
Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
Yeah, it does. It's a bigger issue. I don't know if they've stated their concerns about it regarding stormwater, but I know specifically my, partnering neighbors that are in the back of us have issues with it, but also we hear other neighbors talk about it as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So in those situations, there's two ways to ask us to get involved in an improvement to an existing district. One way is to say, hey, we have to receive a petition no matter what, no matter how much we like somebody or or what have you, we can't perform work other than on what we already own and what's already been described as it starts here and it ends here. So no matter what, we have to receive a petition. And I think we may have provided the information needed to supply one. So one way to do it is to petition to say, hey, we want to expand this particular drainage system. And it's certainly possible for us to come up with a way of expanding it that sets up a drain that is unique to only some property owners. A good example of this would be we have most of the newer subdivisions that have come in since the 90s, a lot of those have been plunked down in a farm field. And so when a brand new subdivision comes in and they're going to have drainage infrastructure for quite some time, since the mid 90s, most communities have said, a lot of people are experiencing problems like you just described, Ms. Weatherspoon. People live in an older sub, and for whatever reason, it might not have been graded out well, or it was graded out well, but it's been 70 years and things aren't working well. The bottom line is communities have decided when new subdivisions get built, we want all the pipes and ditches to be under a public agency. So a new subdivision gets put in, and all of those pipes and stuff are the responsibility of just the new subdivision, because all the land around it, shouldn't have to pay for the pipes and ditches that just serve that existing subdivision. So sometimes, though, that new subdivision is adjacent to a larger county drain, like I described with Stonebridge. There's literally dozens of developments that contribute to the same county drains that serve Stonebridge. So all those subdivisions contribute to the main county drain, but each subdivision also has another county drain. So people might see more than one assessment on their tax bill for county drain work. It might be just for the Green Farms subdivision in Ypsi Township. There's this charge for working on pipes only in Green Farms, and only people in Green Farms are going to pay for that. And then there might also be a charge for the, Pittsfield #1 drain, where there's 27 subdivisions and all the landowners are going to make a small contribution. We don't charge money, though, ahead of time. We can't collect money and put it in a kitty and save it for the future. We can only charge people money after we've performed work. But no matter how you slice it, to do anything that adds infrastructure to our system, it has to start with a petition. And then that petition goes through an independent, what they call board of determination. And that's an opportunity to have a public hearing, to have folks who petitioned and folks who received a public notice that they might be included in a new drainage district might have new fees, to come up and say, well, I've got this problem, or I don't have any problems, or what have you. The bottom line is the board of determination has to hear comments in public testimony and decide whether or not there's enough of a problem that our office is going to be authorized to work on figuring out what's a solution and what it will cost. So that's the process for adding services.
No, I appreciate that. I really do. I think, and you said the amount, if it's less than 5,000, just the neighbors or the neighborhood takes care of that cost. If it's above that $5,000, you guys come in and do some sort of assistance with that?
So the $5,000 thing is really about where we have existing infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
We're not allowed to perform maintenance that costs more than $5,000 per mile. So in there's 500 and some county drains. Most of them are less than 2 or 3 miles of total length. Unfortunately, there's a lot of little separate areas. It'd be a lot handier if it was just, I've got all these things and I can choose to spend money where the worst problems are. Each individual drainage district has to be looked at separately. I can't remember we call your neighborhood Oak Park, Washtenaw Heights. Those are kind of the two plats that got put in there quite some time ago. And if we have 3 miles of total length of pipes and ditches and whatnot, that would mean we can't spend more than $15,000 a year, but we can only spend that money on what we already own. And
Okay, so I
within
don't
our,
I don't think my neighborhood qualifies under that. I don't think so.
well, so doing something in your backyard is kind of like what I talked about before of, yes, it's a drainage problem and we do drainage problems, but it's not in the area where we've got our drains. So there would have to be a process to extend the existing drainage into those backyard areas. And I would
Okay.
just say, if a group of property owners can agree on what to do
Mhm.
in an area like this, in a small area like that, if you can agree on what to do and find a contractor to do it, I can guarantee it will be a lot cheaper to work it out, amongst each other than to have the government come in and do it. Usually, unless there's, at least 70 or 80, but more like 100 property owners in an area, the county government and the state process we're required to follow has just a lot of fixed costs. Think of it like a wedding. If you just have 6 people coming to a wedding, it's going to cost a lot if you're trying to rent out a nice hall, and you got to pay for the hall and whatever the equipment is, and the food, and the waiters and waitresses and this and that. Whereas if you have 100 people coming to the wedding, now your cost per guest sort of starts to make sense to have a nicer wedding. You get 250 people, you can make it a little nicer, or you can choose a different venue or what have you. But when we've only got a small group of people and a lot of just what I call fixed costs related to, again, the law is a process law, and it's set to have checks and balances so that we can't spend a lot of money on an improvement without people having a chance to, have their input and keep us in check. So that's kind of the catch in your situation.
Okay.
Miss Weatherspoon, I'm not sure really how I can weigh in and help you with this, but I could possibly offer my support with Ashley's support. Like if you wanted to invite the neighbors to maybe a small community conversation, maybe at the Learning Resource Center or something, where you could get them all in the same room. Or I mean, if a Zoom is better, Ashley and I might be able to set up a Zoom. If we have the addresses, we could send sort of maybe a postcard invitation inviting people to join, and I could pretend to know what I'm talking about, so that it's not just you, not that they wouldn't believe you, but if you would like for me to join and try and explain to them, what's needed. And then if you're able to gain a price tag, again, I can't promise anything because none of this is my money. It's all taxpayers' dollars, but sometimes we might be able to ask for some sort of help or something. Cover your ears.
No.
So, if you're interested, you could send me an email, and Ashley and I could get together and see if we could maybe come up with a date that we could have a 1-hour meeting or something, and invite. I'm guessing. I think I know where your property is. So I'm guessing it would be like 4 blocks. If it's your block, and the block, to Washtenaw, and then the block that backs you up, if that makes sense.
That'd be perfect.
I'd
No,
be
I'm
willing
definitely
to do
interested
that.
in
I mean, I didn't know that this was still an ongoing thing. These water things, people reach out to me, and I literally call Evan, and I'm like, I can't answer. I'm going to need you to follow up with them, because, and I'll say this, I have told Evan this as well. A 1956 Drain Act that has only, I think, been updated. Devin, did you say one time, Evan? It's only been updated once?
There have been a variety of very, very small adjustments, but it's a 120-page document. So the catch is it needs some updates. The flip side is any updating is this if you give a mouse a cookie kind of thing, where you got to touch everything, and the legislature gets concerned about that. And also the flip side is it's a broad sweeping statute that applies to water in the entire state. That has a lot of nuances to it. So it's anything that covers a broad issue for an entire state or an entire country is necessarily complicated because there's a lot of complicated things to consider, in that.
Yeah. So the crux of it is, Ms. Weatherspoon, this water issue is something that has taught me that I am handicapped in some areas, and this is one of them. Because $5,000 per square mile, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you can't do anything with that. And so Evan has been kind enough to listen to me whine with no cheese about the fact that this really is outside of our hands. And just for informational purposes, I will tell you that I have reached out to our state rep and I've reached out to our senator. This is just an ongoing thing. And I think because it's statewide, it's not something that either they have the capacity to take on, or the state itself doesn't have the budget to handle. So that's not an excuse, it's an explanation.
Sure.
But
no, I appreciate it. I would definitely be interested. I am putting that offer
out there. So if you want, you can just shoot me an email.
Okay.
sandersc@washtenaw.org, and Ashley and I could try and work on trying to convene an intimate community conversation about this, so that you're not the only one standing there basically saying to people, I want you to pay a little bit more to fix this. I could be standing there with you, so they're still gonna feel some kind of way, but I'm willing to take a lash or two.
No, that's good. I'll definitely reach out regarding that. I think it would just be best, like you said, and even if Commissioner Pratt, I know you're outgoing, but and I don't know if the newer commissioner would like to join, but absolutely, whenever we get the time and date settled, you're definitely welcome to join as well. I think all this information is good to just inform people about, because I don't think a lot of people know, number one, but then also, it's a lot of people in Washtenaw County experience this. And like you said, specifically, Pittsfield Township, unfortunately. Yep. And so, I'll be reaching out shortly. And so hopefully to connect with that. Thank you all for answering my questions.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for joining. And spread the word. I mean, that's the purpose of us trying to have these Friday conversations, because there's a whole lot that just cannot be covered in a board meeting. It's not covered in a board meeting. So, okay.
And we're happy to support, commissioners as various issues come up, and just for informational purposes. And I get Ms. Weatherspoon. I don't expect anybody to retain all the things we describe. The process is so complicated. I don't even go open the statute book anymore more than once a month. I just call our legal counsel to describe a situation and be reminded, even though I've been told 3 times, well, you have to do this, this, and that. It is very challenging and difficult, even for those of us who work with the processes on a weekly basis. And I totally get where it doesn't make sense to people outwardly. So we always support our commissioners.
Mm-hmm. And this, I'm going to let you go on, Evan, but Ms. Witherspoon, this is recorded.
Okay.
And so it's recorded because we are going to post it out so that residents, whenever they have the time or the interest, can find out the same information that we, being on here live, are getting.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
If you want to tell your neighbors as well that they can look at this when they have an opportunity, and then we'll look for that communication from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
And I appreciate too, since we got a specific question there and we spent some time on it, I'm just going to pop up a map of county drains in District 4 and around the edges of District 4. So the dark blue lines are what we own and the only places where we can perform work. The light blue squares, as well as the darker blue squares, are locations where people have called us in the past, I'll say 6 or 7 years, for some type of service help. The green squares are stormwater ponds that help protect people from flooding issues, or more protect downstream people from a new subdivision sending more water than it used to. So what you can see here is throughout Pittsfield Township and a little bit to the right in Ypsi Township, there's quite a bit of county drains. And anywhere where you see a lot of short little blue lines clumped together, that's one of those subdivisions I talked about, typically going to be post 1990s, where when the subdivision got built, it was after the township said, man, we're having so many phone calls. We want a public agency people can call when they have a problem, so we don't have rear yard issues like you just described, Ms. Weatherspoon. But you'll see to the left of this map is Lodi Township, and we just don't have many county drains there. The more urbanized the township is, the more likely it is that there's more county drains, because townships don't own or operate stormwater systems, and a lot of townships, don't even own or operate their water and sewer. So townships are not obligated to provide those services, whereas cities typically are. And I'll just kind of move this map over a little bit, and I'm using my cursor here, and I'm kind of drawing circles around what we call Oak Park, Washtenaw Heights. And you can see over the years, I mean, there are a number of calls that we get where we can go out, and usually it's cleaning debris off the top of a drainage structure type of thing, or investigating why water is standing in an intersection where we know we've got some infrastructure there. So this is kind of, the neighborhood, and what you can see is the mainline county drains are on all, on the streets and whatnot. And I know the area we're talking about is kind of these few residences here of, you got some problems in these backyards, and, yeah, it's unfortunate, but again, typically if the residents can work together and find a contractor, it saves a ton of money, not only because we have this process, but also there's a lot of regulations about the type of bonding that government has to have with contractors. And we require contractors to provide insurances and bonding and a lot of stuff that a normal homeowner might not require. So typically having somebody work for the government is going to cost more money than having somebody work privately, quite a bit. It might be 25% more just because there have to be additional assurances and stuff. So, but I'll turn that off. I wanted to get a little specific about, what we have, where we have it. I'm going to go back to my slideshow. Unfortunately, for some reason, the thing where you share the screen is not working properly. So I'm going to have to just go through the slideshow as it's embedded in PowerPoint, but I think it's still there. If people have trouble reading it,
Okay.
I mentioned I'm not good at IT, but somebody told me once, if you hold down your control key and then either use your arrows or your scroller on your mouse, you can actually make what's on screen bigger just for you on your computer. I do that all the time because otherwise I have to look at the presentations up close like this to be able to read some of them. Okay. So anyway, this is an overview. We don't have control of all of the creeks. Like I said, in Pittsfield Township, maybe we actually do have county drains over 30 or 40% of the historic creeks before development, pre-settlement. But throughout the county, it's really more like about 15% of all the historic creeks are under our responsibility for maintenance and keeping the water moving. And a lot of ours are cross country. They go diagonally. A lot of ditches along roads out in the county. The majority of ditches along a road out county in the townships are going to be road commission's responsibility. But bottom line is we have more than 700 miles of drains, more than 600 stormwater ponds, which really help provide resilience to neighborhoods. We've got dams, creeks, we call green infrastructure. That's like rain gardens. We've got pipes and, like I said, detention ponds. And see if I can still go through this. So this is kind of a typical example of early county drains, like I was talking about. Here we've got, a natural creek that we were petitioned to take over. And basically in those situations, farmers were looking for somebody to get big trees out of the drains or remove beaver dams or whatever to keep the water moving. In other areas, a ditch was dug by a farmer, and eventually we ended up taking over that ditch over time. Or maybe the farmers petitioned us to dig a ditch from the Saline River all the way back up type of deal. If we zoom in on some of these fields, you can actually see, if you look close, some very light colored lines. So this is the natural pattern of water flow, even in a field on this aerial image here. And sometimes there's also a field tile underneath. That's kind of this line here. So this is sort of a natural either ditch or what a farmer might have a grass waterway, because it's hard to grow your corn where the water's flowing. But there, we can also see on aerial images that there's what we call tile or a small perforated pipe underground, and that typically will run to, in this case, a creek here, or might run all the way to our county drain. So I know that doesn't matter if you live in a subdivision, but if we talk a little bit about, now we don't really have just farms. We've added urban and suburban drainage, and what you see here, we're off on Carpenter, right? Carpenter and Packard. So you got miles of golf here, but boom, CVS, Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Kroger, not a lot of green going on next to Home Depot or whatever. We did partner with the road commission, and there's a large rain garden in front of the Home Depot, and that helps clean up water that comes off of the road. Water has a lot of pollutants that come off of cars, things like zinc from car tires and copper from brake pads, and a lot of nasty heavy metals from catalytic converters. Catalytic converters are a high heat device that helps clean up the exhaust some, but the metals that you need for a high heat device, when they flake off, are kind of, not healthy metals to have in our rivers, lakes, and streams. So in this area, there's a lot of hard surface is the point. It's certainly not open fields. And that's why you need to have storage ponds when new developments go in. So like one of my staff likes to say, now we've overlaid the blue lines of county drains in this same area at Carpenter and Packard. And as Harry likes to say, if you were all raindrops, about half of you have a hard landing. So now, instead of all of the land being pretty undeveloped, half of it's very intensely developed, and no water soaks into the ground, obviously, in these giant parking lots. And in the winter, when the ground is frozen, everything behaves like a parking lot when it freezes. We had a rain back near the end of January that wasn't that many inches of rain. It was maybe an inch and a half or two. Usually that doesn't cause problems. But because none of it could soak in, the creeks felt like, man, we just got 4 or 5 inches of rain. The creeks were overwhelmed, and yard areas that flood, of course, when it's frozen, tend to flood more. So that's kind of the water. We're getting into the water quality piece of things. So what we see is, in urbanized areas, streams that used to normally flow maybe up here up the bank, there's not as much flow in dry weather. But then when it rains hard and the water is just rocketing off of the TJ Maxx, Kroger, Home Depot parking lots, this gets totally full for a short period of time. The water's rushing and gushing, and it starts to erode the sides. So we see creeks in rough shape like this. A lot of sediment here. Some of the bank has kind of sloughed in, and that's going to start affecting the flow. Some debris starts to gather here. So all developed areas, the creeks tend to look like this. More intensely developed, the worse the creek looks. And the other problem is most creeks have a natural low-lying area next to them called a natural floodplain. And when this creek starts to cut itself down, it gets separated from the floodplain. And now the floodplain isn't doing what it used to do, which is hold some of the water before it goes downstream. So these problems kind of compound on themselves. So this is a statement I like to say. On the one hand, water is soft and flexible, but it's also unstoppable. Our job here at the office is to figure out what the water's trying to do, help it do that, but also to mitigate whatever erosion it's going to cause or water quality issues it's going to cause. And as I mentioned, development in Michigan is fairly recent. It's taken us over 150 years to get to this point. We're not going to be able to undo all the problems we've caused by urbanization overnight.
Okay.
So again,
Evan,
back
we're gonna
to
let's see if we can wrap this up in the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So
sounds good.
I don't know what Ashley has on her calendar.
Yep, sounds good. So what I'm talking about is undeveloped over here versus developed over here. When you got an undeveloped situation, you have a nice creek that flows along the banks. You've got floodplain on either side for it to overflow. You don't have a bunch of trees falling into here because they're not being undercut by the banks. But on the other hand, when we've got a lot of development, and you can imagine where if you got a bunch of trees and some understory undergrowth and some leaves that also are going to dry out and then be more absorbent for water, um, you're going to be able to absorb more water in this situation than in this situation. Turf grass water runs off it a lot faster, and now you start impairing streams when you have development, just because the water rises, falls, flows fast, undercuts the bank, debris starts falling in. You see these trees that are leaning. They're not down here yet, but these are older pictures. I bet these trees are in the creek by now, and hopefully the guys have taken them out. So rainfall patterns are changing. Rainfall is increasing. We're seeing problems like this more and more, and that's going to come. We've got some strategies that are mostly about making sure that the detention ponds in the newer subdivisions are even better than the old ones we've had. We've changed our county regulations about 3 times since the county first implemented, hey, you need to, when you build new things, you need to store that water on your site for what we call the 100-year storm. That 100-year storm actually means there's a 1% chance of it happening in any year, but basically the amount of rainfall we get in a 1% storm has definitely increased almost 50% in the last 50 years. So we're getting a lot more rain. Some places they don't build a pond. A lot of people ask me, what are those yellow things or big black pipes that I see on a site? They do this under parking lots in urbanized areas because you don't have space for ponds. Or there's what you call green infrastructure. This is some housing on the EMU campus. Old turf grass, like I said, where the water flows a lot better. They had flooding problems in here. They came in, did rain gardens, and not only now do you have, we figured out the water wants to be here, so let's plant things that like to drink water, and now it's not a flooding problem, and it's also beautified the campus there. So bottom line is the benefit to residents is we work on cleaning up the water. The Huron River Watershed Council has been monitoring the major creeks and the Huron River for more than 20 years. The taxation is general, or is not general, it's benefit based. So although there's a lot of little districts and a lot of accounting math for us, it's a little fairer setup for people. And again, people can choose, to what degree do they want us to help them out. We're happy to help more. We're happy to help less. We just need feedback from people. And finally, we've got what I call these a la carte services. People can ask us to get involved in lake management. I mentioned again, it's August 24th for the last drop-off day of the year, where 9 to 1 will be out at Eastern Michigan in the parking lot of the football stadium. And then we work with the Watershed Council. So I've got other slides I could go through, but I think this covers the general information. So I'd like to respect the time here. I'm glad we got into an in-depth question, because sometimes I feel bad talking in generalities to people. Well,
I think this is very helpful. And I appreciate it. It's a ton to know. And I appreciate you coming on to try and help us unpack some of it. Is because all of it is not unpackable in an hour.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think my last plug would be we've got an online tool so people can report problems in the middle of the night. A lot of times people are having a problem when the office isn't open. And although I get friends and township supervisors send me emails about problems, I guarantee the fastest way for people to get service is to either call the office or go through the online tool, even if somebody's leaving a message after hours. But don't close the chat before I get a chance to put a link in there.
Okay, no,
and that way
I'll
it'll be in there, and people can upload pictures. They can give a short description of what problem they're having, and we usually look at these and get somebody out there within a day or two to take a look at what the issue is. So while you guys are doing your wrap up of this.
Okay, so you're doing that, and then I'm going to just close us out by saying thank you for those that are going to watch this, and or to Ms. Weatherspoon for joining us. I wanted to remind my residents that as part of the county commissioner duties, I sit on the road commission as a representative for the commissioners. I also sit on the community action board, which is housed up under the office of Community and Economic Development. And I lastly sit on the Michigan Works Southeast Consortium Board. So if you have questions about any of those 3 areas, and you need additional assistance, feel free to send me an email or reach out to me. My email address is SANDERS, the number C, the letter C, at washtenaw.org. So Sanders C at washtenaw.org. And the only other thing I wanted to share with you is that there is a question and answer event that is occurring on August 19th at 7 p.m. at the Pittsfield Township Administration Building, which is 6201 West Michigan Avenue. And that will be regarding the expansion efforts of the Ann Arbor Airport. So this has been an ongoing issue for over 15 years. And if people are interested or impacted by the possible expansion, they are invited to come out to this question and answer session. I am not running it. I will be present, but I am not running it. I am just promoting it for them. And just a reminder that there is construction on Michigan Avenue, and Pratt is closed south of Michigan Avenue. So please, give yourselves a couple of extra minutes, because you're going to be fighting that eastbound Michigan Avenue traffic to try and turn in to get to the Township Administration Building. So
yeah, I'm going to chime in on that, Commissioner Sanders, just because we were at an event not too long ago, and a resident approached me asking about, he had heard that I, or previously my office, has supported airport expansion. And I appreciated that he brought that up, because that's absolutely the opposite of any position we have. I'm not in the airport business. I'm not an expert on it. Personally, I'm not sure I understand why the Ann Arbor Airport would need to expand. But I did say, because many people have approached the office over the years about the environmental impacts of an airport. And obviously, I mentioned our office does a lot of environmental issues. My personal position on this is we don't deal with groundwater, which is the type of environmental issues that are concerns at a facility that has gasoline. Some of that's still lead gasoline for the small planes. My only response to that is the city of Ann Arbor counts on wells in very close to the airport, adjacent to the airport, for 20% of their water supply. I'm highly confident that the city of Ann Arbor is going to make sure they don't pollute their own water. But that doesn't mean I'm in favor of an airport expansion at all. I don't understand the need. And I want to let people know I've also briefed the Democrat who's on the ballot in November, Gretchen Driscoll, on this issue, and given her a high level overview of why that's the position that I personally have. So as long as we're recording this for folks, I want to just put that on the record in case there are other rumor mill out there. I'm not sure where they got the idea that our office had a position one way or the other. I don't recall putting anything in writing, but thanks for mentioning that.
Well, thank you, Evan. And I see that you've added the link here. I thank you so much for that. You are our inaugural guest. So I just appreciate, you being so accessible. Because when I call, you always answer the phone. You're always available. You're very responsive, and you are very open about coming to meet residents or coming out to meetings. And, that I won't say it's rare, but it's not as common as we would like for it to be. So I appreciate you. And you still got, till December to put up with me. And I'm wishing you the best in your next
Thank you so much.
No, I'm going to see you around.